Hello! This is Joe and Laurel Carlson.
Hello!
Hi, welcome. This is a brother-sister team, and you are here for a little talk called Bechdel I.O. How we use JavaScript to make the film industry more inclusive.
This project is many years in the making. We're very excited to present it.
Yes. And we're excited you're here. Yeah, absolutely. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see a little QR code. You're going to see many of those in this talk. That QR code will take you to resources linked to in this talk. Oh, the source code, documentation, links, research, whatever. It's all going to be there. But let's just get started.
Woo!
So, first of all,
here's a bunch of GIFs of some movies that you might recognize. If you're a film buff, you may in fact recognize all of them. So our opening question is, what do you think these films have in common? They're all pretty good.
They're all great films, and if you know what this talk's about, you probably already know. But you may be shocked to know that these excellent films, none of them passed the Bechdel test.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll figure that out here in just a second. I know, Bechdel. I talk about this all the time. People you've probably heard of it, but you may not know the details, right? But we're gonna jump into that. None of these films passed that test. So, first of all, who are we? My name is Joe Carlson, and I work for MongoDB, the company who's putting on this lovely little conference, and I'm a developer advocate and software engineer, which basically means I get to build stuff and then talk about how cool the stuff is to you. I also get to listen to problems you have with any software and can relay that back to the product team. If you like this talk, you should totally come check me out. I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch. I actually don't do much on that Twitch channel. I stream every Friday at noon Central Time on the MongoDB Twitch channel. That's just twitch.tv/MongoDB. And this might be the first time you've ever seen a software engineer plug their TikTok on a talk before, but I'm one of the 3 software engineers on the platform, and I'd love if you come check that out, make lots of programming jokes. And lastly, here's my website. I will also say, too, there's a bit.ly link there that links to that QR code in the upper right-hand corner. Just bit.ly/Bechdel I.O. And again, all the resources there. Lastly, most importantly, all the opinions are my own. If I say something controversial or whatever, please don't get me fired. It's just my personal opinion on this, okay? Cool.
And this is me. My name is Laurel Carlson. Like we mentioned before, we are siblings, hence the same last name. So I am currently a PhD student at the University of Iowa, working on a PhD in American Studies. You can find more about me on my website. There's my Twitter link as well. So I'm in my 3rd year of my PhD, hoping to get out of here in the next couple of years. My main areas of research are contemporary American film, media, and television. And generally, I specialize in horror, and especially feminist horror films, and the politics of the Oscars and Academy Awards, which we are going to talk a little bit about today.
And you just finished your comps, right? That's ABD?
ABD. Yes. Joe's right. I just passed my comps exams just like a week ago after like 4 months of studying. So I'm feeling really great right now, just finishing out my semester.
PhD candidate. Woohoo!
Woo!
This is official. I think now it's official.
That's the official title.
So, who is this for? Well, first of all, this is a light technical talk. There'll be code in here. I don't want to put so much code in here that your eyes are going to start getting glassy. But this is for any devs. It doesn't matter what programming language you are in. I think more importantly, this is for people who might be interested in film and political or academic work you can do with programming. Do you want to talk more about the political side, Laurel?
Yeah, and I'll just show my cards here. I am not a software person at all. This is why this is a collaborative project for me. And this project interests me quite a bit. So I'm maybe one of the non-dev people who could be an audience member here. So this fits into both like software work and academic work. And both Joe and I really view this tool that we've created as a sort of form of political or feminist activism. I think that all of my academic work and probably a lot of Joe's work is fueled by this interest in being political.
Yeah.
So that's part of what this is doing. We think that just by like kind of exposing these gender biases in the media industry is something really important. And we want this to be something that makes sense to just a general audience. You don't need to be somebody who's like getting a PhD to understand this. You don't need to be a software developer to understand this. That's why we have it on a website that's available to everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Open source, and all the code is open source too, which we think is a political action as well. All right, awesome, great. So we hope that's you. If you're here, we hope that's you. So what are we going to talk about today? There's 4 key things we want to be discussing here. And first of all, we want to be discussing what is this Bechdel test thing that we keep talking about, right? Next thing we want to talk about is introducing our project, and we want to talk about how it's built. I'll be focusing lightly on the technical stack, build, and some of the things we learned from building this piece of software, this web application. Laurel wrote a research paper about it, so she'll be discussing the case study.
Yeah, and that will be specifically surrounding the Oscars from 2015.
Great year. And lastly, Laurel and I are going to be discussing lessons learned and next steps for the project. So Laurel and I both learned a bunch of stuff, both on the academic end, but also like the software end and like how to implement this, the details of that we'll be talking about.
And ways that you could get involved. Yes, you, the listener.
That's right. We hope we inspire you at the end. Anyway, we'll get there. We'll totally get there. All right, so let's just start with the basics here. What is the Bechdel test? Well, allow me, the man, to mansplain it to you. I'm sure you want the man to explain to you. Oh, maybe not. Okay, maybe not. I'm actually having my sister talk about this. This usually doesn't go well. When Laurel's not here, it does not go well. But anyways, what's the Bechdel test, Laurel?
I'm very happy to woman-splain it to you.
Thank you.
And our listeners. So this is a film test that was created by Alison Bechdel way back in 1985. Yes, it lives on. In her comic strip, Dykes to Watch Out For. You may know Alison Bechdel from her autobiographical memoir. It's a graphic novel called Fun Home. It's about her childhood and growing up. It's amazing. It was also made into a Broadway musical. Highly recommend. So she's a very talented woman, and we can also credit her with creating this test. So here's the comic that birthed said test. Let's take a look here. So here we see 2 women. They want to go see a movie. They need to try and decide what movie to see. And one of our characters says that she has a rule for picking a movie. She says she only goes to a movie if it satisfies 3 basic requirements. So 3 rules to pass the Bechdel test. 1, it has to have at least 2 women in it who talk to each other, so they need to speak to one another, about something besides a man. Pretty easy, right? It seems kind of strict. She says that the last movie she was able to see was Alien.
And this comic came out in 85. That makes sense. Makes sense. Sigourney Weaver. Is there another woman? Oh, there's another crew member on the Nostromo. Okay. Great.
It's a little dicey if maybe even Alien doesn't pass, actually.
It's weak, but it works.
So, just to recap, 3 rules here.
3 rules. Does it include at least 2 female characters? Do the 2 characters have a conversation with each other about something that is not a man or men? If it has to pass all 3 of these things to pass the test, and if not, no go. If it fails any one of those. Okay, cool. The test's pretty simple. Not too bad, right? But Laurel and I get a lot of people who are a little... It freaks people out. This freaks people out a little bit.
We've got some haters.
Yeah, so I want to just say, before you judge, I want to just kind of talk about why this test is important and where it falls short, and kind of acknowledge some stuff up front. So the first thing I want to ask you is, dear listener, do you like Return of the Jedi, but hate Ewoks? What? I promise this is connected to the Bechdel test, I promise. But if you like Return of the Jedi, but still don't like the Ewoks, and Laurel's told me earlier she likes the Ewoks.
I like them. They're cute.
And God bless. That's great. Like, they're cute. I get it. I mean, when I watched as a kid, too, I kind of loved them too. I mean, they're annoying. I get why they're hated, right?
I don't get it.
It's a common thing, right? But if you hate Ewoks and still like Return of the Jedi, you actually understand feminist film criticism. So the idea is that you can like something even despite its weaker elements, right? And we're dissecting films from a feminist perspective here, and we're not making a judgment call that these films are good or bad.
Right, we're not sort of drawing any lines about taste or, that films that pass the Bechdel test are inherently good, films that don't are inherently bad. This has nothing to do with taste or whether you should like them or not.
A simplistic breakdown of it passing or not and it being good or bad is hurts everyone's ability to talk about it, right? We're trying to like build a more comprehensive way to view film. And we're simply using the Bechdel test as a lens to examine women's place in film.
So just as you can enjoy Return of the Jedi, but maybe hate those annoying Ewoks, you can really enjoy a film that has no female characters whatsoever,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So, that being said, I do want to talk about some of the weaker points of the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test is not perfect, and there are some weak parts about it, obviously. The example I always give is lamps and salads, right? So you can have two female characters who have a conversation about lamps in a film, right? Just 5 seconds, someone mentions a lamp to another female character. Technically, it passes the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test does not show you that, and if they talk about lamps or salads, that doesn't mean that they're actually fully fleshed out female characters. It's just saying this is the barest minimum possible thing you could pass to show that you might have characters that have a little more depth than the average film.
So this test doesn't get into the politics of representation at all, right? Like, you can have a film with no male characters. It's all women talking to each other about various things that aren't men, but they could still, at the end of the day, be, what we would consider bad representations of women, not positive, not role models. So this film doesn't address any of that. It's just sort of giving us this bare minimum threshold of more than one character.
Yep.
That's a woman. Another thing that is becoming, I think, more and more problematic as we move further away from 1985 when this test was developed is that this test is very much ingrained in a gender binary. It only recognizes male versus female. We're not thinking about transgender characters, which, causes some problems for us developing this tool, or non-binary characters that are like not fitting into this binary at all. So there's not room for that here.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's just do a quick recap about the Bechdel test. So, first of all, it's just a test that has 3 rules. Does it include at least 2 female characters? Do those 2 characters have a conversation with each other about something that's not a man or men?
Seems like a lot of films should pass that test.
You'd be surprised, right?
Wow.
You'd be surprised. Yeah, right. It's shocking, actually. We also talked about just the basic tenets of feminist film criticism. And we used the example of liking Return of the Jedi despite the Ewoks, right? We're not making a judgment call that it's a good or bad film based on the weaker elements. We're just using the Bechdel test as a lens to view women in film. We talked about how 2 characters can talk about something like a lamp or a salad, and it doesn't mean that they're fully fleshed out female characters, but it's a downside of the test. And lastly, we talked about
the gender binary and how we're really not transcending that whatsoever using this test. But that's okay. We're still unveiling some of the inequalities in the media industry, and that's what we're seeking to do here.
Yep, absolutely. Good call. All right, let's get into the fun part here. Bechdel.io. So, I like jumping into something practical here. And again, we're going to be using some code here, but I want to introduce what we've actually been building. So, we built Bechdel.io. It's actually live right now. There might be bugs in it by the time you're viewing this. Who knows? It's still a work in progress. But Bechdel.io is a web application that we built where you can upload film scripts, and using our analysis, we can tell you in a fraction of a second whether that film script passes the Bechdel test or not. We also gave a bunch of other do gender-based analytics on that film. We do a bunch of stuff with like number of lines per dialogue, per gender roles, and total lines of dialogue. We analyze contents of those conversations and break down per scenes with like number of characters per gender. So anyway, long story short, upload film scripts gives gender-based analytics, including telling you whether it passes the Bechdel test or not.
So using these analytics, you can also look at individual films and kind of see how badly it passed, or how well it passed, or how badly it failed.
Yes.
Rather than just the simple pass-fail, which is great.
Oh, and I think the other part that's important to mention too is this is the first test of its kind where we're doing an automated test to determine if it passes the Bechdel test. There are websites like BechdelTest.com, but it's more of a forum where people have to watch the film and then they have discussions of whether it passed or not, which has a ton of value. It's very important work. But we're looking at automating and massively analyzing huge bodies of work using an automated tool like this.
Right. I think the key here is that, like, anybody can sit down and watch a movie with a notepad and a pencil and, really think through this test and determine if it passes by the end of the movie. But with this tool, you're able to generate, massive amounts of data without having to sit through every film on your own.
Yep, absolutely. I want to talk to you just briefly about our origin story, right? Every superhero movie's got an origin story too, and I think it's still, I think it's interesting hearing about how this project came together with my sister and I. Because frankly, it's kind of unusual to have a brother and sister team working on a project like this. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. One more. No.
Oh. Stay on the
too
we are superheroes.
We are, yes.
So this sort of was initiated by, I was working on my master's. I was at the University of Colorado Boulder working on a master's in English, and I was in a class about digital humanities. And I had to do a final project, and I really wanted to do something related to feminist film theory, film analysis, but was feeling really limited by my complete lack of technical skill when it comes to like actually creating a tool that could help me do that. And the digital humanities has really always embraced the spirit of collaboration, so I was encouraged to find a collaborator. So I reached out to the smartest boy I knew, my brother, which was interesting because at the time I was living in Boulder and Joe was living in Honolulu.
Yep.
So we were able to work on this project at that time over the series of several weeks over just using like iMessage, Google Docs, FaceTime, and like constantly like checking in with each other, seeing how things are going, what's working, what do we need.
You got on GitHub for the first time then?
Yes, learned some skills.
Yep, that's absolutely right. No, it was super fun too. And like I think Laura and I wanted to work together on something too. This was like a fun project. Like it really combined both of our skills and interests in an interesting way.
Yeah, Joe's always been a film buff kind of as like a side interest, and it was becoming more of an interest for me in my like academic research. So, and then he had the actual technical skills that I really needed. So it was sort of the perfect combination.
And yeah, and I think you two, I mean, like you writing like academic work on it too, I think gives my work legitimacy too. And plus, we talked about this earlier too, like no one likes hearing a man mansplain feminist film critique too. I think. So
we just needed me as the face. We needed me as the face of the project.
When your research is incredible too, like it's awesome too. But I'm like, I think we both needed things from each other to like get this project out there.
And then at the end of the day, we're both passionate about like what this project is actually doing.
Yeah, and what it represents. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So how does this dang thing work? So obviously this is a technical conference. We're going to be talking a little bit about the project. So I love this example, right? If anyone wants to take a crack at what this film is, I'll let you know in a little second here. But this is a film from the 2015 Best Picture nominees. It's one of them. If you have any guess, put that in the chat. Anyway, so I want to talk about how this is. When I first started digging into this project, I quickly learned that film scripts are an ideal medium for programmatically analyzing them. And the reason that is that film scripts follow a very strict like structure. They're all the same, right? They all follow the same structure. So the first thing I think is interesting is when you take a movie script, we as a TXT file, a text file. What we do is we start breaking that up into scenes, right? Because the Bechdel test is based on two female characters in a scene having conversation. And if you've ever written a screenplay, you know that there are certain keywords you use to designate a start of a new scene. So one of these keywords is int. I think there's int, exit.
Those stand for interior and exterior.
Yeah, I did not know that.
There you go.
Interesting, yep. So we can use these keywords and start analyzing where these scenes break up. Okay, so we're at the start of a new scene in a kitchen. Doesn't really matter. But we can start determining who is in this scene. So that's when we need to identify the gender of all the characters in there. We can tell that there's a name on each line. And what we do to determine the name or the genders of each character is we go out to the IMDb and we determine whether the person playing that character in the movie is an actor or an actress. So determining based on, which leads to problems we're going to talk about in just a second, but we use the IMDb API, or like a knockoff of it, because they don't actually have one you can use. We determine the gender of the characters. So it's Samantha, Mom, and Nason in the scene. And using the API, we can determine that there are, in fact, 2 female characters in this scene, right? So we go, boom, right? We have Samantha and Mom.
How did you figure out that they were female?
We're using the IMDb database. So yeah, we can tell if, like, whether they're an actor or an actress. Yeah, it's we just kind of like keep that in memory, and every time we see that name pop up, I just go and check like, hey, who's the person playing this, and what's their gender, and then I start keeping track of that in there, how many people pop in. So we have the 2 characters in there that satisfies that requirement, and then this is the most challenging part. So if it passes this test, we move on to the 4th step, which is determining the contents of their conversation. Did they in fact have a conversation about a man or men when speaking with each other? So, if we go through this, we actually see the word dad in here. So in this scene, looks like that they are talking about their dad in the scene. So we disqualified this scene from being a qualifier from it, and we move on to the next scene. But I do want to show you another patriarchal keyword that is kind of tricky, and we'll be talking about this more in a bit. But the sir, I think the sir is really important. If you look at the actual, like, human understanding of what this looks like, yes, sir, mother, sir, right? Samantha's making a joke and by calling her mom, like, a sir, like a army sergeant or something. But she's not actually referring to a man or men. She's still referring to her mother, just with a patriarchal keyword. Turns out it's really hard to determine the contents of a conversation because these keywords are so deeply ingrained in our conversation. Even when they're not discussing men, it can be hard to determine whether they actually are or not.
And think about the way you speak in daily life. Like, Joe might look at me and say, hey, dude, and, you know,
Sup,
I
guys?
identify as female. Yeah, he might say, sup, guys, to a room full of women. That's just what we do in the Midwest. Or I might say, hey, girl, to him, because I may have a habit of calling people girl no matter what their gender is. So it gets really dicey really quickly.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so that's how we break it up. So I want to talk about our tech stack. Obviously, we're using MongoDB as our database. We built this in 2015, and this was our obvious choice back then, and we still are using it today. And I'm using Express on the back end, and I'm using React on the front end. I built this a couple years ago. Honestly, if I was going to rebuild this today, I would use MongoDB Atlas as our database service, and I'd probably be using a GraphQL service built into Atlas, which, by the way, we have. You check out my other talk about it. So I wouldn't even need a server to do this. And then I have serverless functions that would do the analyzing for me in the cloud. That's probably how I'd architect it today. However, how we built this is just we have a standard server running Mongo or Node and Express, and then we're using a cloud Atlas database, and we're using client or React front end. Okay, I do want to show you. I'm only going to show the code base is actually pretty large. Analyzing the film scripts gets pretty complicated because we're doing lots of gender-based analytics on the film. But I do want to show you probably the most popular function in my entire code base. And again, you can totally check out all this on my website. It's all open source. But that's our contains patriarchal keywords. Whenever people dig in our database or our code base, this is always the most shocking one. And this is probably the only time you'll see a contains patriarchal keywords function ever in your life. But I think the fun part here is kind of how we're breaking down on the left side here, the patriarchal keywords. So this is something I collaborated on with my sister. And these are the words that we're looking for as we're digging into the contents of the conversation. Laura, do you want to talk a little bit how you wrote this list?
There was no technical way of making this list. This was literally us texting back and forth, being like, what are the, like, dude words you can think of?
Totally.
And, like, just, like, continuing to stew over this, come up with new ones. I mean, you can see that we're thinking through, like, what would be used in a different genre. Somebody saying dude, probably not going to happen in the same movie where they're saying prince, right? Like, you really have to, like, think through and encapsulate all the types of narrative films you're going to see.
Totally.
I mean, and we certainly don't have an exhaustive list here.
No.
This could continue to grow.
And I'm trying to think, too, like, yeah, and it's tricky. I'm even thinking, like, Bill and Ted, too, like, they call dude ever. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard, right? This list is really hard to come up with. We actually I have ideas for how to make this better, but this is our first track, or our first go at it, right? Just, like, do these words show up in conversation or not? Okay. The next part I want to talk about, too, is just schema design. So one of the key parts we did with schema design, you can see the Bechdel results and some of the things that we are tracking, some of the gender-based analytics. But we ended up using, the key reason why we used MongoDB was because of the document structure. And we did that for ease of use for querying and easy use of doing analytics and charts on that data. So each of our product pages, or excuse me, our movie pages that show the results, which I'm going to just preview here again, right? We show a bunch of analytics, data, and metadata about that film. So it's easy to just pull that single document up. You don't have to do any additional stuff on it, no joins. All the data we need is in a single document, which makes a lot of sense. If we started doing lots of massive amounts of metadata, or something I'm considering doing too is doing a separate collection just for analysis, like pre-calculated analysis. So we have to do that on the fly every single time it's requested. But yeah, the schema, super important reasons why we use MongoDB, and we chose the schema so we could show everything with doing a single query on the database. All right, that's about it though. I don't want to get too in the weeds on the code here. I'd recommend if you do want to get more in the weeds on the code, hit me up on Twitter, and I'd love to chat about it with you some more, or walk through it too. We're going to talk about next steps of that too. We could actually use your help a little bit with the code base. But yeah, so Bechdel IO. First of all, let's do a quick recap of what we just talked about. First thing we did, we introduced the project, and we talked about why Laurel and I started working out together and kind of the motivation for this project and where it fits in with the other projects that are out there today. Next thing we talked about is how it works, and I gave the example of the scene. Oh, and I never said this is from Boyhood. But this is Boyhood, right? So we talked about how this works, and we talked about how film scripts are built, are so structured. They're like, it's so easy to write programs around analyzing them in detail. It was surprisingly easy. We talked about the work, and we gave the example of my patriarchal keywords function and how we actually collaborated to write that list of words. We talked about the document schema and why we chose MongoDB and how we designed that schema. Oh my gosh. You can hear me clicking that a lot. Okay, perfect. Okay, and next up, we got our case study. So we talked about the project. Now Laurel's going to talk about her work that she did based on the project.
Yeah, so as you might be able to tell by the examples we're giving, American Sniper and Boyhood, we're referencing movies that were nominated for Oscars back in 2015, which was around the time when we started this project. Now we're in 2020. It's starting to feel kind of vintage, but I think that the point still stands. As you may know if you pay attention to the Oscars at all, they are no stranger to political problems. You might remember the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite that comes up pretty much every year.
Yeah. Did that get started in 2015?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
It's probably around there.
Remains relevant, though, for sure. Luckily, we had Parasite win Best Picture last year. Woo! So, we're seeing some steps forward there. So we've had a lot of attention paid to race recently, but there are also still many issues related to gender with the Oscars, which it's sort of seemingly equal because we have Best Actress nominees and Best Actor nominees, right? Like, everybody's getting what they need there. We have supposedly equal gender representation, but when you really dig into the films that are being nominated using our tool, there's a lot that's revealed.
Yeah.
So we looked at the Best Picture nominees and then also Best Actor, Best Actress, as well as Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, and use that to get most of our data when doing this case study. Here we have Meryl. This GIF comes from, I believe, the 2015 Oscars.
2015, yep.
Yes, so a memorable one if anyone was watching. So these were our Best Picture nominees that year. We only had 8. This number varies every year, but this year we had 8.
Yeah.
Remember some good ones here.
This is just a refresher, right? This is 2015. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's a good year, though. Good year.
A good year. So if we run the Bechdel test on all 8 of those films, you'll find that only 28.57% of the Best Picture nominees passed the Bechdel test, which is unfortunate. Again, we've talked about how easy this test should be to pass, but when you look at those 8 films, not many of them have 2 female characters in a scene together speaking to one another. Pretty disappointing. Also, just taking a step back, without even using the Bechdel test, you may have noticed that all 8 of those Best Picture nominees were telling stories about men. They all had a lead male actor, no lead female actresses at all, and all of the general stories of those films were male-dominated.
Yeah, like Imitation Game's about Alan Turing, or Birdman's about
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, yeah, right.
Michael Keaton being Michael Keaton.
Exactly, yeah.
Boyhood, it's about a boy.
Selma's about Martin Luther King Jr., right? They're all all male. The male's the focus. He's the
Right.
he's the main character.
Which, again, to reiterate, we're not claiming that any of those movies are less good because of this fact, but it's a fact that deserves attention, right?
Yep.
So like I said, each film features a male lead rather than a female lead. Disappointing.
Yep.
So if we look at the Best Actress and Best Actor data, which again seemingly should show more equality because, both genders get their own category here. Let's take a look. So if we're looking at the Best Actress nominees, 50% of these films pass the Bechdel Test. Usually Best Actress films are going to have a female leading them. They might be a more female-dominated narrative, so it's not surprising that more of these are going to pass the test.
Yep.
Then if we turn to the Best Actor nominees, only 20% of these films pass, so significantly less. We usually see a huge overlap between films that are nominated for Best Picture and also have a nomination for Best Actor, because again, those narratives tend to be focused on men.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you have like a female actor as the lead role, she's probably going to be more well-rounded and more likely to have a conversation with someone that's not about a man or men.
Absolutely. And you'll see that a lot of the films that have an actress nominated don't tend to be nominated for Best Picture because, again, those are lady movies and they're just not going to get that attention.
No one likes those lady movies.
That's a sad fact.
Yep.
We want to see Michael Keaton.
Yep.
So this trend holds when we look at Best Supporting Actress and Actor. Less fancy awards, but the rule holds true. Only 20% of the films featuring a nominee for Best Supporting Actor pass the test. That's the same. That's 1 out of 5. Pretty disappointing. While on the other hand, 60% of films featuring a nominee for Best Supporting Actress pass. So again, we have a movie that's more focused on female characters, just not gonna get a lot of attention from the Best Picture group. That's the sad fact of the Oscars. They're not as equal as you may think.
Yeah.
The imbalance is unfortunately very clear. So I'm gonna go back here.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
We also wanted to mention a few issues that we ran into with this case study, just specifically regarding this year, that we didn't mention yet, which is the film Selma, which when we were looking for the actual film scripts, which are obviously...
Wait, where do you want to go back?
Right there.
Okay.
When we're looking for film scripts, the script for Selma just not out there, which makes it impossible for us to run the test.
Yes, that's right. When we did this analysis.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's out there now.
The other issue we had was the film 2 Days, 1 Night, which had a Best Actress nominee in it, French language film. It did have English subtitles, but the actual screenplay in French. I'm sure if you were really good at French, you could make a list of those patriarchal words that are French, and you could adapt the tool to make it run.
I totally forgot about this part. Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. Because ours it only works for English languages.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I guess you could transcribe the subtitles. You could make it work, but for the case of our tool here, we were unable to include those.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I totally forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let's see here. Lessons learned. I want to talk about like lessons that we learned with both Laurel's study, which we talked about a little bit here, but also with the code itself, right? I think we found some weird, interesting overlays there. So, actually, yeah, you want to talk about some of the conclusions from your paper?
Yeah. So, I mean, sort of the general conclusion here, we're focused on the Bechdel test, we're focused on the Oscars, but you can really take a step back from both of those tasks and see what this reveals about the film industry as a whole, which is that we don't have enough leading roles for women. These stories about women are not being told. They're just not being addressed. And a lot of this comes from the huge gender imbalance that still exists behind the scenes in the film industry. So even if we did have, an equal number of roles for men and women, we still have way, way fewer female directors, female screenwriters. And those are the people that are going to make those stories get told. So even if we don't want to get into the weeds on what the Bechdel test is or why we chose the Oscars, there's a huge political lesson to be learned here, which is that we have a huge gender bias towards men in the film industry and in media as a whole.
With both writers, directors, producers, right? Like every layer of that, there's opportunities for us to be more diverse, right?
Right. And again, we're focused on gender here, but I mean, this expands to race, it expands to social class, religion, ability, disability. I mean...
Yeah.
You could make an interesting tool for all of those things.
100%. Right? Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah. I love you said that too. Like our tool, Bechdel Test, is obviously just from binary gender perspective, but there's... we didn't do research on it, but we're just telling you that there is opportunities there, and I don't think no one would disagree but there's a lack of diversity in that part of the film industry. Okay, let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about my tool and some of the lessons we learned from that tool. So first of all, we mentioned this earlier we gave that example of seeing no or yes sir, no sir, mother, right? But the point is, patriarchal keywords are super ingrained in our vocabulary, right? It's hard to avoid them, and it's super hard to write a test the way we wrote it to determine whether you're actually discussing a man or men, because they're just like a lot of words like craftsman, or like a lot of words we use to be that as like referring to all genders, but that gets commonly used as a way to just like for everyone, like a placeholder, right? But they're hard to determine. I do have some ideas for how to fix this, which we'll talk about in a second here. But next thing we talked about too was our app currently does not work with transgender characters. So since I'm pulling from Internet Movie Database, IMDb, to determine whether the person playing that is a man or woman, I'm assuming that the character in the film is the same gender as what's listed on IMDb. I'm not exactly sure. IMDb, I think, is still binary and doesn't keep track of like additional genders. But so like, or if a person who identifies as a man is playing a woman in a show, like the movie Transparent, or
Right.
I don't know, or like Crying Games, right? Like that would not work for this test. It doesn't represent how that actually works, right? And
We
I think,
also have more and more like out non-binary working actors
Totally.
as well, which
the one from Orange is the New Black, can't remember her name. Yeah, there's lots, right?
right. Who may or may not be playing non-binary characters, right? Like it gets dicey.
It totally gets complicated really fast, and like our app is not sophisticated currently enough to deal with that, and that was a huge lesson learned for us.
But either way, I think that like this tool can sort of flag scenes that, you know, that might fail, and you can check over it as a human person, right? And it's still going to work a whole lot faster than sitting through a list of films and like, you know, watching it that way.
100%.
Yeah.
I know we'll talk about this more too in a sec, but I want to talk about some other work that Laurel and I have done with the digital humanities. But the bottom line, like the thing that I actually want you to get out of this is like, if you forget everything else from this, I just want you to remember that like there is a whole world of tools that is waiting to be built. So something that Laurel and I learned while building this is, and I'm going to make vast generalizations here, but a lot of times people working in the humanities don't have programming skills. And a lot of times with people with programming skills don't care about the humanities.
Or maybe they care, but they're just not an academic, so they feel like that's not their turf.
Absolutely, totally. But we found it's like, we've been doing this a little bit of work. We've discovered a ton of new stuff that can be done. There's amazing amounts of discoveries and collaboration, and I'm sure there's a ton of people working in the humanities that are dying to get their hands on someone wanting to do research like this.
Right. And by humanities, we mean like people in English or
Yes.
film.
History.
You know? Things that you might
Film.
be doing on the side for fun that you're interested in.
Yeah.
You could pair up with an academic who's, you know, does more legitimate work there and would love to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or just for fun or for like art. I'm going to talk a little bit about a little side project I built called Punk. I just like books and film and TV, and like trying to combine my passion for both of those and art. Like, and there's this thing I didn't know. It's the digital humanities, right? Like, there's a lot of work there. I don't know. You should go check it out. Like, Laurel and I spoke at a digital humanities conference last summer, which was totally fun. ACH, the Association for Computer and the Humanities.
Yes.
My cat's feeder is going off right now. If you can hear that in the background. It's lunchtime. Yeah, there's amazing opportunities. I don't know. You should totally go check it out. My goal with all these talks is like, I just want you to fucking get out there and go like make some cool shit.
And you'll probably find if you meet up with some academics, they'll think that what you do is really cool, and you'll think what they do is really cool. And it's just great to sort of overlap two different worlds, and there's just a lot of opportunity there.
100%. Totally agree. I totally agree. Okay. Oh, yes. So, I want to talk about so this project is still a work in progress. I kind of come back to it every once in a while. But first of all, we want to add more films. I've been kind of slowly adding films over time. I wrote a tool that kind of like massive imports it. Getting film scripts is kind of hard. I wrote a tool to get those too, but it's still, we want to add more films to the database. So we talked about how we're using that list of keywords. So something I think might be able to fix that is using natural language processors in the cloud. I think natural language processors are getting really good at identifying content. I think you could train a processor to understand patriarchal keywords in kind of context to kind of suss out those false positives you get from like those yes sir, no sirs, right? Those like the dudes. But I would love to use NLP instead of just my primitive just keyword checking to get those done. I have no idea how to do that. I need some help. If anyone is listening to this, loves this, hit me up. But I think that this would be a great use case for doing that. Also, by the way, using film scripts is a great way to train networks. That's how most NLP networks are using film scripts because they're writing in a natural human way. So if you're interested in that, this is like a great overlap that actually might do some good. And lastly, too, I want to do digital data visualizations. I haven't done a lot of work on that yet. Actually, I'm going to put a plug in here, too. MongoDB charts, totally free and open for everyone. I'm going to be using those in there. It's a super easy way to do visualizations and embedding those in there. But that's kind of next steps is going to be adding some additional data using MongoDB charts. So that's what our to-do list is. So basically, we kind of need your help. If any of this is interesting to you, we are currently looking for contributors. So we're always looking for help, design help, digital analysis, data scientists, NLP work.
Or if you were looking at our list of patriarchal words and you were like, hey, they forgot this one.
Yes.
Let us know.
just like suggestions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We will take it. We will take it. Hit us up. Hit us up, please. All right. So let's see here. Let's do a quick recap here. We're doing great on time here. So the case study. Laurel wrote a paper based on Bechdel, and she analyzed the 2015 Oscar Best Picture nominees. Actually, all the nominees, right? For Best Actress, Actor,
right?
Supporting
all
actor,
the big nominees that people really care about. The ones they save for the end.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't do editing, but next time. So our results. What do we find?
The results are as expected and disappointing. Only 28.57% of our Best Picture nominees passed the Bechdel Test. And only 20% of films featuring a nominee for Best Supporting Actor passed the test. More disappointing results here.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what this reveals is that we need to make more opportunities for women in every area of the film industry, both on screen and off screen, so we can fix this imbalance.
100%. We learned a bunch of important lessons. Most importantly, friendship. Next steps, we're going to be adding more films. We'd love to rewrite it with a trained natural language processing cloud processor. And we want to do additional data visualizations. I don't have this in here too, but we talked about the transgender characters are not represented well. The French translations don't work. Or internationalization doesn't work yet.
Right.
What else is there? I feel like there's something else I forgot. Whatever, it's fine. Look back, we covered already. It's just a recap section. What's next? Oh, I forgot about the slides. My favorite. So, Lori, did you know, software engineers here, that there's a Bechdel test for programming? Lori Voss, the CTO of NPM, he works for Netlify currently, but the Bechdel test for programming. To pass the Bechdel test for programming, you have to a function written by a female dev must be invoked by another female dev in an open source project. My question to you is, if you work on an open source project, or more importantly, a professional project at work, do you think that your code base passes this test?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. Something to think about. But this is kind of interesting. And there's a bunch of other applications too, but I think this is the most interesting one. The reverse Bechdel tests. Right, we're not going to get into all that today. But Bechdel test for programming. Think about it. Please consider this your own code base, and you might be a problem if you can't pass the Bechdel test for your code. So, hopefully, did we pique your interest at all in programming, getting started with it? Do you want to build something? Do you think MongoDB might be a good project or good database for your next digital humanities project? If so, you should totally check out our community. So we have actually community.mongodb.com or the free and open university. I recommend checking out our data modeling course or our M001, which is our MongoDB basics course. I just want you to go home and make something. I want you to go home and just do it. I want you to go home and try making a project. I want you to go and figure out, like, can you help make a politically important project in the digital humanities? Do you have to partner with someone? Do you have an idea for something? I don't care. Go out and build it. I want you to make this thing.
If you can't do it, find someone to help you do it.
Yes.
That's what I did.
Oh, totally. Yeah, teamwork, baby. But right, there's tons of opportunities, and I want you to get out there. Oh, this is fun too. I want to brag about another project I built. So this is actually, I collaborated with another coworker of mine when I lived in Hawaii. Shout out to Ray. But it's called Punk, in short for punctuation. But what it does is it takes in ebooks, and we analyze the punctuation of the ebook. So this is an example of Call Me Ishmael. This is Moby Dick.
I hate that book.
It's a horrible book.
The worst.
But you can do a bunch of analytics based on the punctuation of the ebook. People have actually built this too. You can do like cool data visualizations, analytics. But we discovered a new way to analyze works of like Shakespeare or whatever, right? It's like, and this can only be done programmatically. This is work that is like important and new and discovering new ways of breaking things up using computers. And again, this field is so open. Like, just do it. There's amazing stuff you can do. And if you want to use MongoDB, you want $100 in free MongoDB Atlas credits, you can use code JOK100. There's a bit.ly link. Use that QR code. Here's a bunch of the resources we use. Bechdel.io, our case study, the source code, and the BechdelTest.com, which is what movie-based forum is. The original Bechdel Test. You want to check that out. And we stole that Return of the Jedi but Hate Ewoks analogy from an amazing AV Club article. So if you want to check out that original article, go check that out there. Again, all the links are available using that QR code. Okay, questions. Obviously, this is pre-recorded. Laurel and I are in the chat, though, answering any questions you want. Yeah, let's see here. There's my socials again. I post a lot about this kind of stuff on my Twitter. It's the best way to get a hold of me. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Oh, I forgot to put your stuff on there. Laurel's thing is at Laurel Carlson, too. I forgot to put hers on here.
It's fine.
But thank you so much. We love all of you and appreciate it so much. This is such an awesome opportunity to talk about the stuff, and we think it's so important, and we're so glad you could join us.
We hope you were inspired.
Yes, absolutely. And goodbye.
Bye.